Well, Rudy also saying the questions were laid out like a law school exam. He said the questions were complex with a lot of sub-questions. So let's continue this discussion. Joining me now, Shan Wu, CNN legal analyst, defense attorney, and former federal prosecutor. Sung Min Kim, a CNN political analyst and White House reporter for The Washington Post. And Shimon Prokupecz, CNN crime and justice reporter. Great to see you guys. Shan, I want to start with you. What is your response to Rudy Giuliani telling me that basically if there are any follow-up questions from Mueller's team, that they'll decide whether or not to answer them? Is the ball really in their court here?
The ball really is in Mueller's court. I mean, they've dragged it out as long as they can. It's a good move for them to answer things in writing first. But any follow-up questions are going to be determined by Mueller's team, and also sort of the enforcement aspect of whether they can make him come and give verbal answers or not is definitely in Mueller's court at the moment. I mean, they can certainly claim we're going to refuse to answer this, and then the next step is, will there be some sort of a legal enforcement issue which ends up in the courts over, is there executive privilege, for example?
Right, and that was a big point of emphasis in my conversation with Rudy Giuliani, because of course I asked, what is your view on obstruction? The latest round of questions didn't have to do with obstruction. It dealt with all the activities before the inauguration having to do with collusion. He made clear that, look, they could still come back and ask about obstruction, but that it would be covered under executive privilege. Is it that clear-cut to you?
No, it's not that clear-cut at all. I mean, the whole area of executive privilege is a pretty amorphous one because there just hasn't been that much litigation about it. I mean, there was some in the old SB situation and also, of course, in Watergate. But it's not clear that it's covered underneath that. And I think it's interesting that Giuliani says that. If we assume he's telling the truth about that, then it may be that Mueller wants to focus first on the campaign aspects of it. And for now, they're leaving aside the knotty question of will the president answer questions about obstruction or not.
Right. It was clear that that's not necessarily off the table. There isn't some sort of agreement between the two sides. And Shimon, on that note, it sounds like Trump feels that the president definitely won't sit down with Mueller. They keep saying, look, Mueller's not going to want to start a subpoena fight. This wouldn't work well for them. Is that really the final word?
No, and we really don't know what the final word is until Mueller submits the report, or if they go ahead and move towards subpoenaing the president. We've not been given any indication that the Department of Justice, that Mueller will not subpoena the president if he doesn't cooperate, or that they will subpoena the president. We just don't know. And like with most things with Mueller, we never know exactly what's going on. So what we're getting is really a one-sided view that is from the president's side, and most specifically is Rudy Giuliani, who keeps spinning things differently depending on the day, depending on what's asked. So we don't know where things stand. Yes, it's a huge step that Mueller has these questions finally. We've all been waiting for this to happen. We've been waiting for this day, and certainly Mueller has been waiting for this day. And what the next steps are, quite honestly, we just don't know. Will there be follow-up? Will there be a demand from Mueller that the president answer the obstruction question?
And what's interesting to me, Sung Min, is that some of these questions in this latest batch had to do with the president's then candidate Trump's own comments he made when he had that press conference saying, hey, Russia, if you're listening, when he talked about the fact that there could be something coming out on Hillary Clinton after the Don Jr. Trump Tower meeting, and that, of course, never came to fruition. That could very well mean that Mueller's team is still paying close attention to what the president is saying even now about the probe as it pertains to obstruction.
Exactly. I mean, we've laid out the facts here that the bulk of the written questions from the special counsel did center on activities during the campaign. But according to the Washington Post reporting, there were about a dozen questions spanning over kind of 5 general issues. So clearly, Mueller asked about what the president knew about the Trump Tower meeting. You know, the special counsel also asked about the kind of what his associates knew about the interactions with Russian officials in general. So while the questions may be focusing on the activities of the Trump campaign, you know, Shimon is right that we don't know how much further Mueller will go, and I think we'll just have to wait and see as to the next steps of the special counsel.
And it does make you wonder, we've seen the Mueller investigation become politicized in terms of public opinion. Most Americans view it through a partisan lens. How would a subpoena fight between Trump and Mueller change things, Sung-Min?
Well, that's been a lot of Rudy Giuliani's strategy. We've seen once the president brought him onto his legal team that he has taken this very aggressive bulldog approach to the campaign or to the special counsel probe to kind of, shape the public narrative of the investigation. And I think that's also the president's tactic here when he tweets angrily about the corrupt Democrats who are working for Mueller's campaign, which is also not accurate. And you have seen public polling kind of drop in terms of the confidence in law enforcement in general and also the campaign. And I think that's what really congressional Democrats are worried about. I mean, we remember that, the House will be in Democratic control next year. Protecting the Mueller investigation, however long it goes, is going to be a major focus for them. But, don't discount the drama that we'll see over protecting the special counsel probe in the coming weeks of this Congress. You have Senator Jeff Flake, who is retiring, but a very vocal critic of President Trump, willing to block, dozens of judicial nominees that the Senate wants to take up before the end of the year, and to try to force a vote on legislation to protect the special counsel. So you have this very contentious partisan fight unfolding on Capitol Hill, and we'll see that continue to develop in the coming weeks.
Yeah, right. So even if the Mueller probe wraps up, there's still the threat of investigations on this on Capitol Hill. And what's interesting, Shan, is you see this sort of PR strategy playing out publicly. The president just yesterday, once again, saying the Mueller probe is a witch hunt. Rudy Giuliani echoing the same kind of sentiment, saying that, there are angry Democrats working for him and so forth. You have to wonder what it's like behind the scenes. Rudy Giuliani said publicly it's not awkward, but you do have to wonder how that plays out behind the scenes.
You do, and that's a really good point, Pam, because the issue about whether the Mueller probe has become politicized, it's really important to distinguish that the politics around it, the public opinion, is incredibly politicized at the moment, but the probe itself is remarkably pristine. I mean, they have not spoken to the press, they don't give any views. As Shimon was saying, we never know what's going on there. So by all indications, and from my limited exposure with them when I used to represent Rick Gates, they are extremely professionally focused without any public interaction and therefore without any politics. So I would suspect that behind the scenes over there in Mueller's shop, it's still a very intense atmosphere, but business as usual. I really don't think that they're being affected by the public issues at all, but certainly the public and political sentiment is at an all-time high right now.
All right, guys, stick around. Shimon, I have more questions for you. I know I didn't get to you much in this last block, but a lot more to discuss, including the bombshell reports